What's going on, guys? Certified meteorologist Jonathan Kagas with you live for another edition of Tropics Watch. We get together every Monday during hurricane season to talk about what is going on in the Atlantic, whether there's something out there or not, why it's quiet, why it's not quiet. If there's something out there, of course, we are going to track it. We're coming at you live on the News 6 ClickOrlando.com YouTube channel and also on ClickOrlando.com and the News 6 Hurricane app. So if you want this live stream in the palm of your hand, download the Pinpoint Hurricane app. You can track any hurricane out there, any storm out there, and stay up to date on the tropics in real time. Best interactive hurricane app out there. Download that for free in whatever app store you choose. Post in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you have any questions, I want to know where you're watching from as well. Hit that post in the comments, and we will get to those a little bit later on in the show. In this particular Tropics Watch episode, in this live stream, we are going to talk about several things, and there are a lot of things to get to. I'm going to get that off the screen right there. Nonetheless, the Atlantic, we've highlighted this a lot for several different things. Of course, the coral's a big thing, but when this becomes to the Atlantic hurricane season, this could get ugly real quick because of how hot the Atlantic is. So we're going to take a look at that and why we haven't seen a bunch of storms develop even though the water's so hot. So hang on for that. We're going to take a quick look at Dawn. Dawn is pretty much an afterthought now. It's barely hanging on. It was our first hurricane of the Atlantic season. That is way up in the North Atlantic. And then the Saharan Dust. If you're watching from Florida, if you're watching from Texas, if you're watching from the Caribbean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The air quality is taking a hit, especially in South Florida. And you see that haze through a lot of the Florida Peninsula and parts of the Gulf Coast because of all of that Saharan dust. So we are going to break all of that down over the next 10, 15 or so minutes that we are together talking about all this stuff. I first want to start with the sea surface temperatures. They're insane. Again, we've talked about this a lot, even prior to hurricane season, but look at how red hot the water temperature is. Look at this, 88 degrees, 88 degrees. We have a few readings off the coast of Florida pushing 90 degrees. Around the Keys, we're in the lower 90s. Way out into the central Atlantic, we're still in the low to mid 80s. Again, this is way above normal. Record hot for this time of the year. Again, these are September-like temperatures in the month of July. You see right down through the Caribbean as well, upper 80s to right around 90 degrees. So that is something that we're going to watch if something were to get going. Given the lack of wind shear, given abundant moisture in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, these storms could just take off. So this is what we're really, really watching closely. And there is something out there that has a low chance to develop that we're also going to get into that. We're going to break down the Caribbean forecast as well, because regardless of development, we're likely going to see some heavy rain in parts of the Leeward and Windward Islands as a result of what is now Invest 95L. Again, Invest means Area of Investigation. The Hurricane Center highlights that. And 95 is its number. They run from 90 to 99, and then L is the Atlantic Basin tag. So that's why we have 95L out there. I want to show you, again, temperatures speak for themselves, but it's really the anomaly that tells the story here. This color table that I have laid out here, once you start getting into the light purple, that is 3 degrees Celsius above normal. The darker purple is 4 to 6 degrees above normal. Look at what's going on in the North Atlantic. We've had a big ridge of high pressure out there to kind of calm the winds and not allow anything to churn up. We have the color table maxed out, and it's being exceeded here up in the North Atlantic. That is greater than 6 degrees Celsius above normal. Look at all this red here. We're a couple degrees above normal here in the main development region. There are the Cabo Verde Islands. Here are the Lesser Antilles. The coolest, relatively speaking, to normal is down in the Caribbean. You see the yellow. Again, that's pushing about 1 degree Celsius above normal. And then, of course, well documented. We've talked about this a lot in our videos. Off the coast of Florida, again, the coral really, really suffering here because of how hot the water temperatures are. But look at all of that warmth again throughout most of the Gulf of Mexico. So we 100% need to keep a storm out of the Gulf this year. Had some questions as to, okay, water temperature's crazy hot. Then why haven't we seen all of these hurricanes or all of these storms? There's a couple of reasons, and we're going to document that higher, that we are actually way above normal for this time of the year in terms of the number of hurricanes we've seen, which is one. and the amount of energy combined that these storms have produced. So we are actually way above normal for this hurricane season, even though we've only had 4 hurricanes. Now, the reason for that is water temperature does not create the storms. There needs to be a storm. The water temperature is the fuel. So if there was a storm around, it'd be able to take advantage. In June, so hang with me here, in June, we typically see these cold fronts coming off of the U.S. mainland, stalling out, and that's where we get more of those homegrown storms. Then once we get into August and September, we have the Cabo Verde season, which are the storms that roll off of Africa, the thunderstorm complexes that roll off of Africa and then make their long journey across the Atlantic. We also, in June, we also have the Central American gyre, which helps to spit out disturbances and then takes advantage of the warm water, and then that's how they get going. So there are a few things in play. Climatologically speaking, we are in the quietest part of hurricane season because of what I just mentioned. We have a couple of forcing mechanisms early on in the season that can help storms get going. And then once we get late July through August and September, then we have those storm complexes that roll off of Africa. That is your forcing mechanism there, the West African monsoon season kicking in. Brett and Cindy really weren't supposed to be there. Typically, and that was because of the warm water. We did have a couple of those waves roll off of Africa and take advantage of the extremely warm water. Again, it had been less than a handful of times that we had a named storm develop in that region, which was right in here, develop in June. And of course, we had 2. So we almost took out half of that, 50% almost, of all the storms since way back in the 1800s developed in this hurricane season, which again is concerning. I know what you might be thinking. Of course, we have this going on. Our giant El Nino, again, these are your sea surface temperatures anomalies. El Nino typically means good things for the Atlantic because that increases the wind shear. So that is the other thing here that we're going to be watching is if we do get more wind shear, it's going to help to knock the storms down if they get going. We've highlighted that a lot too, this great battle between the hurricane season, between the wind shear that should be increased in the Atlantic versus the insane jet fuel that is the Atlantic right now. So again, the water temperature doesn't create the storms. We are climatologically speaking in our most quiet time other than late November within the hurricane season because we've lost the forcing mechanisms of early in the season and we have not yet really tapped into the West African monsoon season, which are those waves coming off of Africa like clockwork, a lot of times lined up like ducks. The other reason for that kind of lull in the action for the most part, and again, I'm kind of bouncing around, but Don shouldn't have been there. Don became a hurricane way in the North Atlantic. We typically don't really see storms that far north strengthen like that until late in the season, but that's how, again, above average the water temperature is. We've had the dust return. We got off to an early start of not having dust. There was atypical. We've had the lack of dust so far this season, except for the exception of the last couple of weeks. But the dust has been back. It's prolific, and that dry, dusty air is not a good breeding ground for tropical systems. It's a dry air layer. It's a very warm and stable layer. We need instability. We need moist, I know everybody hates that word, a moist atmosphere for those thunderstorms to thrive. And again, that dust is just very, very dry, as you might imagine. Excuse me, a lot of talking, already trying to lose the voice, almost 10 minutes into the live stream here. And if you're watching this on record as well, still post in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. And again, we're coming at you on clickorlando.com and the Pinpoint Hurricane app. Look at all this dust. This is as of 7/24, July 24th. We have thick dust through South Florida. There's air quality alerts in play because of the thick dust. Let me get my face off of here, and I'm going to show you, extending all the way out towards Texas and Louisiana, we have some dust as well, likely making air quality for sensitive groups a little bit unhealthy out there. So again, just keep it easy. It's really hot, of course. We're at the end of summer, or in the middle of summer, end of July, and it's really hot. Hey, do me a favor. If you are finding this live stream helpful or informative, if you're enjoying kind of having this conversation about the tropics, hit that thumbs up button for me. That really does help us out a lot. It pushes it out to more people so more people can see and join in on the conversation. Again, if you have any questions or any comments, if you're enjoying this, how this live stream this weekly show can be better, post it in the comments. I would appreciate that. In terms of the dust forecast going forward, there's the deal. All that white on your screen is the dust. It's the computer model picking up on the dust. And you see that right there. Watch what happens over the next few days. It still kind of meanders around the state of Florida. We start to see it thin out a little bit. This is Thursday, July 27th. And then we have more trying to push towards South Florida and then to the Western Gulf before we start to see this kind of dissipate a little bit. So this is going to be on Sunday, July 30th in the afternoon. So again, when you start to take a step back and be like, okay, if the dust is going to start to leave us a little bit, and climatologically speaking, once we get into August, the dust does become a little less prolific. And that's what really allows the Cabo Verde season to get going. The Atlantic is juiced, of course, at the water temperature. We have the dust going away, and it becomes a little bit more favorable environment for those waves of going. Hey, so we were just talking about this. This just happened in real time. Dawn is no more. The headline, again, this is as of the 11 o'clock advisory. Dawn is now post-tropical. So we no longer have Tropical Storm Dawn again. This was our first hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season, but now you saw that tropical storm symbol turn to an L. It has worked its way over much cooler water and has now become post-tropical. So Dawn is an afterthought now. It is no longer going to generate ACE, and I will get into ACE in a second. And there you go. Some of the last advisories issued on Dawn. It's just going to continue to fade away into the North Atlantic. Crazy, though, that we did have a tropical storm in July this far into the Atlantic. This is Greenland and Iceland up here. Look at this. There are the Canadian Maritimes, Newfoundland. There's Iceland, United Kingdom, Ireland. Crazy stuff. Again, that just goes to show how insane the water temperatures are in this area. All right, moving along, I do want to show you there is an area that the Hurricane Center has highlighted. This is Invest 95L. You see the thunderstorm is blossoming. They are very unorganized now. Development chances have actually come down. They were a little bit higher a couple of days ago, but they're at 20% now. There's still an opportunity because the water is so warm, but this is very unorganized at this time. Regardless, though, impacts are going to be the same. Even this does quickly spin up and become a tropical depression either before the islands or into the eastern Caribbean. We are going to get some very heavy rain towards Dominica, towards Martinique, into Trinidad and Tobago, into Grenada, into St. Vincent and the Grenadines, into Barbados, all because of this. Even the parts of the Virgin Islands, into Leeward, Windward Islands, all of the above, going to get some heavy rain from this wave. I want to show you this. This is kind of the model forecast, and this is going to go far out into the future. So as we continue on here, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this live stream that there is just so much to talk about right now, even though there's not a lot going on out there, but there are a lot of factors that we're going to start to get into going forward here. This is the model spin. This is the European rendition. I always say we're looking for, this is the first time you've tuned into Tropics Watch, first of all, welcome. If you're finding this live stream informative, and if you do like having this conversation about the weather, specifically the tropics, give it a thumbs up and post in the comments where you're watching from. I would love to see where you're tuning in from this morning as of July 24th. And if you're watching this on their taped version on the record, welcome anyway, and post in the comments where you're watching from. We're looking for a consolidated ball of red. That means that we have increasing or strengthening low-level spin. That is the development of that surface low. Here is our little disturbance. I have the wind field on here too, so we're also looking for a counterclockwise wind field. So here is our little system. Notice we have colors kind of spread out across a very large area. Okay, so from a storm perspective, that's not the best. It shows that it is unorganized, so again, that is good news. So that is really good news right there. Hey, Mary, what's going on at Cape Canaveral? Thank you for joining the live stream this morning. It is great to see you. Also notice here that we have this kind of N shape. Notice how the arrows go up and then back down. That would indicate we have a wave. So it's an open wave rather than a circulation. So this is still a tropical wave coming through. Taking the model forecast out further, you see a little bit of a swirl there. It tries to get its act together in the Eastern Caribbean. But notice it's still not very strong. We're seeing yellow there. It's still kind of broad, so it's not really showing signs of getting that well organized. And we still have that N wind field there, so that open wave. I want to show you further out. You saw this little flare up here. Maybe there might be something to watch here off the coast of Florida into the Carolinas. This is going to be July 28th. A little something tries to get going. Again, that is just one model rendition of that. But then there's another juicy tropical wave, and you're going to see that kind of spiral through. This is as we round out July, on July 31st. Might be something to watch here, especially for the northeastern Caribbean. As it goes up, you see we have a little circulation there, and then brighter ball of red. Still kind of broad, but there might be enough there for that to be classified if that comes into fruition. Again, we talked 3 weeks ago that we were going to look towards the end of July, that we're going to watch towards the end of July for activity to pick back up again. And again, we have some of these features, these convective features that come through the Atlantic basin and help to pulse up thunderstorms, and that's what you need for storms to get going. And then again, as that happens, they can take advantage of the water. Again, the water temperature, even though it's crazy warm, crazy hot, record hot, does not actually develop those storms, and then that kind of loops around the Bermuda High that's kind of hanging out there. In terms of the Caribbean, if I have anybody watching from the Caribbean, this is how it's likely going to play out. You see all this dark green throughout a lot of the Leeward and Windward Islands. That is going to be because of our disturbance, whether it becomes a depression or not. Likely going to see that there. We are going to see some heavy rain, some gusty winds. It's nothing too crazy, but we are going to have some inclement weather. There's 2 o'clock on Wednesday. This is going to be on July 6th? Today's the 24th. All my days are screwed up.
26th.
But 26th is the Wednesday. That is confirmed. Hey, Kevin. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining the live stream. Awesome. Always good. At least I'm biased, but always good to stay updated on the weather. And then as we go out further, you see that rain towards the Florida Keys and then into the Bahamas. So some of that rain, or at least some of that tropical moisture, could surge up into South Florida, which would actually be good because we have those air quality issues because of all that Saharan dust, which we just talked about. So there we go in terms of the rain. I think some of these model forecasts are underdone here, but you see the picture here where we are going to see some rain into the islands. 1 to 2 to 3 inches of rain can be expected from Trinidad and Tobago to Dominica into Martinique, Guadeloupe, into Barbados because of Invest 95L. Again, that's whether it becomes a tropical depression or stays an open tropical wave as it currently is. The winds, it's going to get gusty, but it's nothing crazy. You see 30-mile-per-hour winds towards St. John's into Rosal, 20-mile-per-hour winds as well. 14-mile-per-hour winds in Crown Point. So again, it's going to get a little breezy. It's going to get a little gusty in the Eastern Caribbean, but it's nothing too crazy. If anybody has any comments or any questions, post those into the comments comment section for watching on YouTube. Again, if you are watching on clickorlando.com, welcome. Whether you're watching it on the live version here just after 11 o'clock on July 24th, again, post in the comments where you are tuning in from, or if you have any questions. What's going on, man? Thank you for tuning in from Central Florida. Good to see you. Good to have you on the live stream. As we kind of break down the tropics, again, we get together every 11 o'clock, every Monday, 11 o'clock in the morning, to just kind of break things down, what's going on out there. Thankfully, right now, we're pretty quiet, but the environment, the water temperature, it's getting kind of crazy. It's been kind of crazy, so we just want to keep those storms away because there is a lot of fuel for those things to use. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, next Tropics Watch will come at you at 11 o'clock live on Monday. If you found this helpful and you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and then you will know when we post new content. And again, just set a reminder, if you want to stay up to date on all things tropical weather, 11 o'clock every Monday through hurricane season, Tropics Watch Live. We can have this conversation. You can post in the comments. If you have any questions, you can feel free to post those in there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in again. This has been another edition of Tropics Watch Live. The biggest thing now is that we are watching the insanely hot water temperatures that have not cooled down any, still record hot across parts of the basin. If you found this content helpful, give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. I appreciate you guys all for watching. For the people that commented, it was great to see you, great to meet you. We will catch you guys on Monday. Again, we've been coming at you live on the clickorlando.com YouTube channel, on clickorlando.com, and, of course, the Pinpoint Hurricane app. If you are looking for one way to stay up to date this hurricane season, download that Pinpoint Hurricane app. Search WKMG in your app store. Look for the Pinpoint Hurricane app. It is a free download. You can track the storms throughout the entire Atlantic, whether they're coming your way or not, and you will get updates as to when they form, before anybody else, straight from the Hurricane Center. As soon as they hit their little magical button, if they actually have a magical button, that updates on those storms, you will be the first to know. It happens in real time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will catch you next Monday.